Well, this seems like a pretty normal show. You know, if I had a nickel for every show that features a white man and a woman of color wearing space fish on their faces as gas masks and using space eggs as flashlights, I mean, I guess I would just have one single solitary nickel. Scavengers Reign is an animated series following the survivors of a damaged cargo ship called the Demeter 227. The survivors are all stranded in different places on a wildly alien planet called Vesta, which is overflowing with weird plants and creatures that are all part of this complex and mystifying ecosystem. The survivors arrived in 3 different escape pods that crashed in different locations. So we've got 3 separate storylines following these characters. We've got Ozzy and her robot Levi, Sam and Ursula, and then Cayman, who is on his own, except he gets sort of intertwined with or subsumed by this super weird telepathic creature. And he's also in a sense joined by painful, regretful memories of his estranged wife, Fiona. Anyway, all of the characters are on separate missions to relocate the crash-landed Demeter ship in hopes of finding necessary resources and fellow survivors.
It looks pretty deep. I can see a little bit of light on the other side. Maybe we can get through.
Yeah, it definitely is deep, and I struggle to watch 12 episodes of anything too, but you can definitely get through this. It's really good. I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, but I'm an animator, and I love the medium of animation, but I kind of hate a lot of animation films and animation shows. Because, well, mostly because so many of them are really produced for children. And when they're not produced for children, they're produced for adults who appear to me to be a lot like children. No, okay, that's mean. But like, it just seems to me that so often, in the rare cases when animation is produced for adults, what that sort of means is that it's this sort of gross out, you know, very sexual, very violent kind of stuff that is targeting people who are really into superheroes and weaponry and toys and loud things, I guess, as opposed to the kinds of adults who are really interested in human relations, art, culture, love, nature. Now, I fall kind of more into that second group of adults, and that's why I've made a few videos now on this channel under the banner of Great Animation for Grownups. And this is another video in that series, I guess. So this whole video is about a show called Scavengers Reign, which was released on HBO Max in 2023, but then promptly cancelled by the bean counters who run that company now. And the show was then sold to Netflix in 2024, which is why so many more people can now watch this great show. And that includes me, because just haven't felt like paying for HBO for a while. Well, as some of you probably already know, this is a pretty great show. And I sort of figured it would be, because it's created by Joseph Bennett and Charles Huttner, based on their 2016 short film called Scavengers, which was a good short film. I have long been familiar with Bennett and Huttner's work because they are prominent figures in the indie animation scene. I don't imagine they have any idea who I am, but I sort of think of them as peers, because that's a scene that I perhaps don't inhabit, but I kind of visit pretty frequently in certain ways and in certain spaces. So I almost feel like I have kind of a parasocial relationship with these guys, and it's pretty amazing to see them do a big-time show like this on HBO, no less, or what used to be HBO. Huttner in particular is someone whose animation work I really admire. I feel like he has this exquisite sense of pacing, but also of weight. And kind of managing weight in your animations that's like up there, you know, it's one of the things that's the most difficult to do, and he does it really well. And Joe Bennett, I always thought, had a really funny sensibility with his short films. Another guy involved in this project is Buckaloo, who's another figure that pops up in the indie scene a lot. He's a producer and writer here. Buckaloo has made some successful shorts of his own, and his style tends to be sort of very realistic, and his writing style is quite realistic as well, often tackling pretty serious subjects. I think all of these folks are friends even prior to working on this project together, and they've collaborated in the past as well. And I'm sure there's other people on this project that have similar impressive backgrounds. It seems they've swapped duties throughout the production of the series, so that different people, including the lead animators, wrote different episodes. Pretty cool, and very much in the spirit of indie animation, only this time there's a bigger budget, and they even got the animation studio Titmouse to help produce it and everything. Should I tell you more about the people behind the show?
No, stop it. That's enough. Please.
Alright, well, I'll keep it moving. Typically when people review shows, they review it based on maybe the 2 or 3 first episodes. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. I've watched, I think, the 5 or 6 first episodes. So I haven't seen the whole thing yet. But I think that's okay. Maybe it's even a good thing because, you know, I don't really want to tell you everything that happens in the show or spoil anything for you. The point of this is I want you to go check it out for yourself and enjoy the show. And if you've already seen the show, you know, hopefully you'll still enjoy hearing my thoughts about it. This is not going to be really a review per se, but it's more like me telling you some things that I really like about this thing. By the way, this video is sponsored by Taco Bell. No, not really. I guess this video is just sponsored by yours truly, so like and subscribe, I guess? So for me, the storyline about Ozzy and Levi is the most engaging and sort of defines what the show is about. This sort of coming together of man and machine. You know, man and nature, machine and nature. But I love that the structure of the show is such that other people might prefer either of the 2 other storylines and find the most meaning from those. You can get attached to your characters of choice, and you can decide what the show is about through what that POV most readily suggests. In other words, there are multiple ways into this thing. Of course, the show is really about all of the things, as all good fiction is. But I'll start talking about Ozzy and Levi. So Ozzy is this pretty badass woman who is smart and knowledgeable and brave and fiercely independent. But she does have a trusty partner in Levi, her robot. Or maybe not that trusty, because as the show progresses, we witness an evolution in Levi. She goes from being strictly robot to kind of getting enmeshed with gooey nature stuff that is all over this planet. And as this more biological mass emerges with her technical innards, Levi becomes more human.
Actually, Ozzy, I've been spending my nights exploring the surrounding area while you've been sleeping.
While I've been sleeping?
I didn't think you would mind.
Basically, rather than only following pre-programmed routines and instructions, and rather than only doing things that are sort of immediately and obviously useful to Ozzy, Levi starts doing things more on her own initiative.
Did you do this?
Yes.
For what purpose?
I just thought it looked nice.
Open your maintenance hatch.
Levi even displays an interest in gardening.
I've been gathering fruit seeds from near our pod, but the plants seem to thrive much better in this environment. Oh, I'm sorry. This food is actually unsafe for humans to eat.
I don't understand. Then why would you grow it?
I don't know. Maybe I wasn't doing this for you.
Later on, the robot learns to appreciate touch and song. Ozzy is at first extremely reticent and skeptical about these developments, but over time she starts to sort of warm up to the benefits of her robot companion becoming a little bit more human. And essentially the robot teaches Ozzy a few things about being human as well, or about being part of nature, part of something bigger than yourself. There's a powerful scene where this crazy herd of big animals come running at Ozzy in a dangerous stampede, and she's forced to join them, even as she fears getting crushed. But Levi coaches Ozzy to follow the movements of the animals to survive. Ozzy enters into a sort of Zen flow state where she becomes one with the herd. It's this profound point about how sometimes the most actualized we can be as individuals is when we allow ourselves to be part of a community. The field opens up for Ozzy as she is powerfully in charge of her own destiny, but this is happening through assimilation and acceptance of the ways of the community, the ways of the broader ecosystem. At one point, Ozzy turns Levi off because she's concerned about these sort of biological developments within Levi. But after turning her back on, Levi says,
"What might appear strange to you is not necessarily a malfunction.
What do you mean?
The world shares things with me that I couldn't possibly experience by myself. Things that are far beyond what's right in front of me. But when you shut me off, I see nothing, feel nothing, and I don't like that."
Just the idea that this robot likes some things and dislikes other things is a strong hint that we're dealing with a real being here, a real life form. The parallels to AI and a future in which our machines may have feelings and thoughts of their own is pretty obvious here. This is sci-fi, but it's also less sci-fi than ever. Before I talk about Sam and Ursula, I want to touch on another thing that I really like about this show. It really favors the show don't tell method of filmmaking, leaving a lot of space for us to immerse ourselves in this very richly rendered world. It reminds me of the best aspects of POV video games. I'm not that much of a gamer, but something like No Man's Sky comes to mind, or at least what that game promised to be before it came out. Of course, in that game, the worlds and creatures are generated by algorithms, while in this series, they're human artistic creations. And as technically impressive as generative art can be, it's clear to me that human artists remain a step ahead. Anyway, I love the way this show breathes. If you've ever watched a video essay or read an article about the films of Miyazaki, you'll have heard the point about how in all of his movies he takes the time to show us sequences that don't appear to really push the narrative forward, at least not if you're thinking about it from sort of an American perspective. But those sequences are important parts of the films anyway, because they steep us in the world. They make the whole thing more believable, more real, and more human. Scavengers Reign does that in spades. Let's talk about Sam and Ursula. This is a really rich story as well. These two characters are a little bit at odds in terms of approach and maybe from being of different generations. But through the show, there's a nice arc of them respecting each other and finding common ground. Basically, Sam is a very no-nonsense, old-school, skillful engineer type who has little time for anything that doesn't move us forward towards a goal. And Ursula has similar ideals, but she's more open to learning new things from the environment around her. She has a young person's exploratory spirit, and she takes a little bit more time to observe and ponder. I love how, through their different approaches to the tasks at hand, there's sort of potential for conflict beyond squabbles there, but the show mostly chooses to let that be a possibility rather than exploiting it for easy drama. These two characters show some restraint. They get annoyed with each other, and often something is bubbling up, but they both choose to simmer down before it becomes that much of a thing. I feel like most animation just sort of goes to the max on every axis. So I really appreciate the bit of restraint in this show. You know, this reminds me of something, and this is like the world's weirdest aside, but when I was growing up as a teenager in Norway, there was this TV personality that emerged named Alexan. He became what we in Norway call a stunt reporter, which basically meant that he was this comedic figure who would act like sort of a journalist, but reporting on juvenile things and doing it in a brash rock star way. The vibe was sort of like shock jock meets ex-drug addict meets a Daily Show reporter. Maybe a little bit like what Russell Brand used to be like when he was a leftist, before he became a right-wing grifter. Anyway, one time I was watching this interview with Alex, and he said something that has sort of stuck in my brain ever since. They asked him something like, who do you admire? And ever the provocateur, his answer was, porn producers. He said that he admires porn producers because... And keep in mind, this was in the 90s, so like technology wasn't what it is today. But he said that like the minute science develops a small enough camera, there would basically be like 0 seconds between the invention of that camera and the decision by porn producers to insert it into a woman's orifice to give us a new extreme perspective on sex. He was saying that there would just be no hesitation, no thinking about like, is this a good idea or not? Should we do this? And he admires, I guess, the sort of unquestioning, moving ahead nature of those kinds of people. I guess he sort of really likes to like take it to the max ideology. For some reason, this insight, if you can call it that, struck me as really profound at the time, and thinking back at it now, I can't for the life of me figure out what I thought was so profound about it. But I bring it up, I guess, just to say that, like, to me, it sometimes feels like most animation is produced with that same kind of take it to the max ideology. Max violence, max loudness, max flashing colors. And I do see the virtues of pushing a medium to an extreme. But personally, I tend to really favor things that have a bit of restraint, Things that are a little more thoughtfully done, perhaps, and things that allow the audience to breathe. So I think Scavengers Reign shows admirable restraint, although it does also go to the max on certain things. It's just that those things are more sort of, existential or philosophical or emotional and beautiful. And it doesn't shy away from exploring sort of deeper concepts. There is quite a lot of gore in it, but it's not the kind of gore that like typically turns me off. It's more the gore of life and of nature. The world is a messy place. And look, there is a lot of action here too. I mean, there's epic fighting, there's, ripping out of guts and all of that stuff, if that's kind of what you show up for. But, those things are a part of the show in a way that actually serves a purpose, that kind of deepens the show's arguments, you might say. All of that stuff is just helping to render this world that has something to say to us. Now, Cayman was my least favorite character at first, and the storyline I cared the least about. But his story becomes increasingly pivotal as the series moves forward, and I grew more and more interested in him and his past. Basically, we learn through flashbacks that Cayman rerouted the Demeter to a more perilous route, seemingly because he was just so prideful and angry and didn't think he needed to consult with anyone else. He was this unsympathetic dude who thought he knew best and could figure stuff out on his own. He's hung up on outranking others, being in charge and not needing anyone, and he's now paying for that. He's filled with regret, although maybe less about his decisions with the Demeter and more about his estrangement from his wife Fiona, who also worked on the Demeter, programming robots like Levi. We see clips of their relationship falling apart as Cayman fails to prioritize Fiona, while he descends into a dark spiral. In a way, Cayman is the most human character here, in the sense that he is full of flaws. And his storyline involves a yearning for love and a failed relationship. And he's just kind of a messy bitch. In the show, he ends up having this weird relationship, I guess you might say, with this very odd, disturbing, animalistic creature that has some sort of telepathic ability that is pretty hard to describe. This animal seems to sort of sometimes help characters and sometimes hurt them. It's all quite strange, and I guess maybe you just have to watch it to experience this world for yourself. I want to give a shout out to the music in this show, composed by Nicholas Snyder. It's basically like lush sci-fi synth vibes that oozes curiosity and vastness and mystery and connection and eeriness. It's both alien and very human. And importantly, it's really kind of enmeshed with the overall sound design of the show, and it's just expertly crafted and really well done, and I'm playing very little of it in this video because I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube overlords, nor with the creators of the show, who I respect very much. So the music you've been hearing in this video is for the most part just some generic synth arpeggio kind of stuff to try to approximate the vibes. By the way, the first few notes of the Scavengers Reign intro music kind of reminds me of Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now, which is sort of really apt and awesome, although I'm sure it's probably just a coincidence. Anyway, I don't want to waste any more of your time.
It wasn't a waste of time.
All right, well, glad to hear that. So I guess like this video and comment and subscribe if you want more videos on animation and art and design and culture and a lot of aimless talk, if I'm being real. Okay, thank you so much for watching.
Okay, time to go.